Hello, I'm Mark Rickenbach, and I'm a GP near Southampton in a practice of 17,000 patients with about 8 GP partners. And I'm going to talk about the heart-sink feeling. And this comes in two parts. The first part is about the heart-sink feeling, and the second part, which you need to link into, is about handling and managing that heart-sink feeling. I'm a professor of healthcare at Winchester University, visiting professor that is, and I'm at Southampton Education Unit where I'm a GP trainer, and I have been an associate dean in education. I have a website, www.crick.co.uk, which has a summary of all that's said here. There's a link below, and also there's an article in the British Medical Journal which covers the same content, and the link is here. You can see a picture of the heart-sink consultation, the heart-sink picture, which is done by Rebecca Hawkes. And she comes from New Zealand. There's a link there. And that heart-sink feeling that you see in the picture occurs when you're faced by a difficult situation where you don't know how to manage it, hard to solve situations. And in the case of a general practitioner, this might be a complex consultation and you can't see a way forward despite meeting the person several times. They describe it as a pit of stomach feeling in the literature. And when we discussed it at the Wounded Healer NHS Health Practitioner Conference, which this talk comes from, they described physical symptoms of palpitations, sweating, anxious related feelings, and the actual feelings of anxiety, low mood, frustration that come with this heart-sink feeling. What I want to do is to try and reframe it so it becomes a heart rise feeling, and we've turned the picture upside down so that you can see the heart rising. I want to help you change your perspective on the heart-sink feeling. And as I say to my patients, I'm sorry I can't fix it fully, but I hope I can make things a bit better. Or another way I say it is, I'd like to fix it entirely, but I can't make a miracle, but I'm going to try my hardest. Ellis described the heart-sink feeling in a letter written in August 1986. This was published, and it described the dysphoric person who has difficulty bearing with the frustrations of life. He talked about chronic unhappiness and spiritual dampness. And it was Tom O'Dowd who a couple of years later actually looked at people who were causing or associated with a heart-sink feeling in the doctor. He looked at about 28 people and 28 consultations. And then they split the group into roughly half. Half they discussed, and he concluded they helped them move forward after their discussions with his colleagues in confidence. But he coined the phrase heart-sink patient. And I think that's a misnomer, an incorrect way of saying it, because I don't think there's such thing as a patient who's always heart-sink. I think that the doctor is the one who has the heart-sink feeling, or the health professional that's meeting that person. And I talk about it as a heart-sink associated patient. So perhaps you could discuss it, or perhaps write it down if you've got on your own. And a couple of questions I'm going to ask is, what do you feel and when does it happen? So what do you feel, that heart-sink, and when does it happen to you? And this may be in life, or it may be in a consultation, and you may be a healthcare professional or a GP. So what do you feel and when does it happen? And take a few minutes, put the talk on pause while you do that. And then after having a few minutes, come back and restart. I'm going to carry on talking. So those feelings of pit in the stomach, those feelings of anxiousness, frustration, being overwhelmed, the weight of the world on your shoulders like Atlas. Those are the things that we're talking about today. And you may notice those feelings come in different stages. There's the anticipation before meeting somebody, or in this case, the consultation. There's the reality of what actually happens in the consultation. And then there's afterwards, as you look back on it. And they're slightly different. And when there is a challenging consultation for, say, my GP registrars, we might talk about the fact that you're having to break bad news, or say there's been an error, or perhaps follow up on a bereavement after being looking after a patient. And the anticipation of that it might be quite difficult and challenging, it can be quite high. But when you actually come across the reality and you hear what people say, and people are often grateful and say thank you and things like that, afterwards you can feel a lot better. So one of the messages is always good to talk, because that clears the air. And the other message is that the anticipation can be worse than the reality. But in Heartsink, this anticipatory feeling seems to carry on, and the feeling afterwards is almost as bad. So it's how you move forward. Well, that feeling is anchored to the name or the memory that you have. And this anchoring occurs in a thing called cognitive behavioral therapy, where a particular event triggers off feelings in yourself. And we're trying to reframe that. We're trying to break the link between the name and the feeling. What happens is you get negative associated thoughts, or NATs. And we're trying to convert them to positive associated thoughts, or PATs. And you can do this by imagining a positive situation, and imagining the smells, imagining the colours, imagining the feeling, the sensations that are around. So it becomes really live and a positive thought. It could be a happy event at home with the family, or playing in the garden, or whatever. And what they try to do is anchor that to touch, so that when you touch, say, your wrist, you can trigger off that more pleasant, positive thought. And you can use that to try and overcome the Heartsink feeling. But the point about it is it's an anchored feeling. It's linked to a particular name, and you're trying to break that. So we talked about Heartsink associated patient, not Heartsink patient, because Heartsink is different for each doctor, and some doctors don't get Heartsink feeling, and some doctors do. It's normal to have that feeling because you're frustrated about trying to move things forward. Usually people have multiple issues, and they present with lots of different things, some things that are brought back again that have been resolved, some things that are new. They often have psychosocial issues, social issues at home, or problems with their thinking. They have mixed minor and major non-specific issues. That is, they're not particular things you can sort out easily, and they're non-specific, like tiredness or aching generally. And some of them are small and short-lived, and you know they're going to go, and some are going to be ongoing. Often they have extensive records that go back quite a way, and in the past that used to be paper records. And they might have firmly held beliefs that this particular thing is the case. For example, that they need a CT scan for their earache that's been there for a couple of days. They might be frequent attenders, and that may be a sign that you need to put more time into the consultation and to try and sort things out for them. Or it may be a result because they're not getting things resolved. And they might come in with a scrap of paper with a list of problems on it. And again, that might make your heart sink a bit because you've got to deal with all this. But on the other hand, having a list is quite handy because you can prioritize it and discuss what you're going to discuss now and what you'll discuss later. I have read Away with the Penguins by Hazel Pryor. And Granny Macready is a type of Heartsink patient, which you can talk about as an example. And she is somewhat limited in her consultations. She dislikes seeing the doctor anyway. She dislikes talking about illness. And with other people, she comes across quite firm and directive, and thinks what she thinks. And Granny Macready, over time, meets others. And as she meets others, she starts to become more familiar to them. They get to know her. And as they do, they understand why she has been a little bit more curt and short about things. And then, as Granny Macready is able to work through her psychosocial issues alongside penguins, then she starts to become more open, and her consultation approach changes. So that's an example, and I can think of a patients very similar to Granny Macready. Obviously, I can't talk about them. And we've talked about heartsink associated patient. Well, how about heartsink associated doctor? Are there some doctors or healthcare professionals that get more heartsink than others? And there were a couple of studies that looked at this, and they took doctors and asked them about their heartsink patients, how many they had, about frustrations with patients. And they noticed that younger doctors seem to have more heartsink feeling. And I think this is probably related more to experience than age. They said age under 50, but actually, I think that may reflect experience. And the absence of, or the less training and communication skills and fewer qualifications may also reflect experience. But then there's working environment, and longer working hours tend to cause problems. And so if there's a workload that's high, then you're more likely to get heartsink feeling. And then there's personality and knowledge. And Ellis described the fact that people who are very conscientious might have more heartsink feeling because they get more frustrated and there's more they want to do. And others who, like Rebecca Lee, point out that if there's gaps in knowledge, then that can become a source of concern and frustration and trigger off heartsink feeling. So what I want you to do now is to discuss with someone else who might be around, or just reflect and write down that what do you do when your heart sinks? And what helps you and your patient most to do? And I'm going to leave you with this question because this has come to the end of part 1. And then you can go on to part 2 when you're ready, and perhaps with some notes on what you do when your heart sinks and what helps you and your patient most to do. And in part 2, we're going to look at the managing the heartsink feeling and some tips on how to do that. So thank you for listening. I'm going to stop at this point. Thank you.